When Donald Trump won the White House in 2016, he knew he had a large swath of working-class voters to thank.
We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
You know, maybe he meant less educated, but maybe not. Regardless, his full-throated embrace, however inartfully expressed, was seen as a welcome change for many without a four-year college degree, who've long felt left out and looked down upon in American politics. In his latest book, political philosopher Michael Sandel writes that the system is, quote, a hollow political project that reflects an impoverished conception of citizenship and freedom, adding, even a fair meritocracy, one without cheating or bribery or special privileges for the wealthy, induces a mistaken impression that we have made it on our own. It's called The Tyranny of Merit, What's Become of the Common Good. Michael Sandel is also a philosophy professor at Harvard, and his classes have been viewed by millions, and I mean millions, online. Michael, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good to be with you, Jim.
Can we start at the barbershop level? And I'll tell you my two major takeaways from this. The notion that you work hard, if you work hard, you succeed. And if you fail, it's because you didn't work hard enough. I think you call that the rhetoric of rising is BS. And number two, that for years, the center left in this country hasn't grasped that concept, while faux populists like Trump in 2016 have. Did I capture the essence of this?
You've got it, Jim. The barbershop version, I like your version of it. The Democratic Party has lost credibility and has even alienated many working class voters because by 2016, the Democratic Party had become the party more attuned to the professional classes, the well-educated, the credentialed classes. And one of the most potent sources of Donald Trump's appeal, of authoritarian populist appeal, is the sense that elites are looking down on those who lack a four-year degree. And the Democratic Party had better figure this out in order to stave off the grievances, the politics of grievance and humiliation that Donald Trump was able to exploit.
Are those forces at play, the ones you just spoke about and the ones you write about in your book, are they at play today, even in this pathetic non-debate we are having on Capitol Hill about protecting voting rights? They are, aren't they?
Well, they are indirectly. It's interesting. Joe Biden was the first Democratic nominee for president in 36 years without an Ivy League degree. Yeah. I think this was a kind of secret weapon, not only because it helped him to connect a little bit better with blue-collar voters, but also because I think he's a little bit less tied to the meritocratic political project. If you want to compete and win in the global economy, we were told again and again, go to college. What you earn will depend on what you learn. You can make it if you try. This seems inspiring, but there's actually an insult implicit in it, because if you didn't go to college, and if you're not flourishing in the new economy, your failure must be your fault. That's the implication.
You know, the subtitle of your book, as I said, is What's Become of the Common Good. I've always believed the vehicle for embracing the common good was government. And if one buys that, if you buy that, when half the population has totally lost faith in that elitist government as they see it, how do you ever rediscover the common good?
We have to rethink the elitism that gave rise to the resentments that Trump and others are able to exploit. And that means rethinking quite a lot, Jim, because it goes back 4 decades. It goes back to the kind of market-driven version of globalization, the neoliberal globalization, the Democrats and Republicans embraced. And the idea was, we were told, yes, there will be gains to the winners and there will be losers, but the gains to the winners can be used to compensate those who lose out. Problem was, the compensation never happened. And even beyond that, the whole idea that those who land on top deserve their success. They've done it. Their success is their own doing, the measure of their merit. That's deeply galling to the nearly 2/3 of Americans who don't have a 4-year college degree. We forget that.
So to get back to current events yet again, when we read the ProPublica thing about a week ago, when we saw that the Musks of the world, the Bezos of the world, at least in some years in the last decade, made zillions but paid absolutely nothing in taxes. It seems to follow your notion, it was the perfect opportunity for the Democrats to seize on that and propose doing something about that so that those guys weren't perceived to be getting better treatment than working class Americans were getting. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. But there's an obstacle to the Democrats dealing head on with inequality. And that is, Democrats and the center left have been accustomed to evading the question of inequality and offering instead individual upward mobility through higher education. Mm-hmm. This is the idea that we want to make sure that everyone has an equal start, and then the winners will deserve their winnings. If you have that philosophy, if you think that inequality of income and wealth and power can be dealt with only by encouraging people to get a better education, then you're never going to be able to deal in a serious way with the structural inequalities reflected in what we see with the tax system, for example, with these billionaires paying very little.
So how do we change the mindset around four-year colleges and the prestige that goes with it? I would argue that Joe Biden has attempted to do that by talking about free community college. You don't have to go to the most elite schools like the one that you work at, but you can go to community college or a tech school, a voc school, and have a great life too. No?
Yes, but we have to make that possibility real, and we have to reverse the steep hierarchy of prestige that puts universities like the one at which I teach at the apex, and that relegates community colleges and also other forms of learning, vocational and technical training, to a kind of afterthought. One economist at Brookings figured out that we spend about $162 billion at the federal level helping people go to college, and that's a good thing. We spend about $1 billion supporting those who go to vocational and technical training institutions. There's something wrong with that, and what's wrong with that is it reflects a kind of credentialist prejudice that I think has given rise to legitimate grievances against well-educated meritocratic elites.
Well, speaking of credentialing, you also talk about, what work is, I don't know if you use these words, credentialed, admired, has prestige, and what does it. And one of the fixes you talk about, the paths away from the tyranny, is celebrating dignity in all work. But one of the reasons I'm as hopeless today as I am so many days is having thought about that. Remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all celebrating the dignity of the grocery store worker, the guy or woman who was delivering food to our house despite the threat to his health and the health of his or her family. That dissipated in a nanosecond, did it not?
Well, it seems as though it's dissipated. I share your worry, Jim, and I had your hope at the beginning. Suddenly, those of us working from home during the pandemic realized how deeply we depend on workers we often overlook, the warehouse workers, delivery workers, home health care workers, childcare workers. So this seemed to be a moment. We were calling them essential workers, after all, seemed to be a moment for a broader public debate about how to bring their pay and recognition into better alignment with the importance of the contributions they make. I hope that that impulse hasn't entirely dissipated, because a political project focused on the dignity of work, I think, is the most compelling and necessary alternative to what I consider the stale political project of meritocratic striving, telling people that the solution to inequality is simply individual rising through higher education.
Michael Sandel, I only have 30 seconds left. Give me one thing on your list of cures, for lack of a better expression, that even in this gridlocked country would have a chance to break that logjam and maybe open us up to escaping this tyranny of merit.
I would begin by debating taxes from the standpoint of the dignity of work, why should we tax people who make money from investments at a lower rate than we tax income from work? I would start there, and from there I would move on to a financial transactions tax, maybe as a way of lowering taxes on work, such as the payroll tax, not as a panacea, but so we could begin, Jim, to have a broader public debate about what it really means in practice to affirm and renew the dignity of work.
Couldn't agree with every single word there more. Michael Sandel, it's great to see you, and congratulations on the book.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Thank you.